I mean, do you find that the songwriting process for your own stuff and the Charlatan stuff is, I mean, is it different? What is the, could you maybe give us an insight as to how you approach the two? Are you a different person in each vehicle almost, you know?
So it's going to sound a bit vague, but actually, never intentionally. I just kind of like, I just write. And sometimes I think after it's written that it might be good if Mark gets involved, the Charlatans guitarist. And other times I just don't know. At this moment in time, I'm writing for another solo album. So until anything changes, which it often can, you know, I'm just writing for a solo album. And when we did Different Days by the Charlatans, I was just writing for the Charlatans. Yeah. And I kind of, there is a slightly altered mindset, you know. I think, right, this has got to be kind of, you know, like this. You know, this has got to be a hit. Or, you know, I'm going to try and write a hit or something like that. Whereas with my solo stuff, I try not to write hits.
Do you find that then they bleed over? So
yeah, and then it just gets
really
interesting. Then, you know, it just becomes something either slightly abstract, or, you know, or it can be even more poppy than trying to write a pop song.
Yeah, I'm particularly intrigued with your quest for vinyl. I was wondering if you could maybe tell everybody a little bit about this, your obsession, and how. I mean, I think everybody sort of loves the idea that they could turn their obsession into actually a thing, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I grew up listening to vinyl, and it's a preferred, you know, way of listening. I like putting a record on.
It's interesting, isn't it, how a record, because vinyl is a physical thing as well, it's not just about the song, it's about when you bought it, all of that sort of thing. The way that music was consumed, you know, as we grew up is so different from it is now. And was that a big part of wanting to write that?
Well, yeah, because, I mean, you know, obviously record shops are closing now, and there's not as many, but then there's new ones opening. Someone comes along, and someone with new ideas. And I think that's always going to be the case. But vinyl seems to be having a resurgence.
The third aspect of what Tim's been doing, and that's his record label. Perhaps if you could just sort of tell us how you got into that. Were you approached? Was it something you were always, you know, very...
Yeah, I mean, I always loved a record label in Manchester called Factory Records, and it was run by Tony Wilson. He put out some really interesting records, and it was almost like when you went into a record shop, you looked for something that was on Factory and hoped that they had something out, because it would be, you know, at worst interesting, you know, and at best an absolute classic, you know.
So you love the kind of concept of creating a community, or is it a sound, or what was the... Well,
I wanted to put records out by people who I loved, and I realised that what I loved wasn't really what anybody else loved, and so I was putting out records by people who no one else would have put out, really, and it was very, very kind of raw stuff from young artists in London. That's how it began. And I really like to upset the rhythm as a label. So there's no A&R department.
You just let them get on with it?
No, things just arrive, you know, and I either like it or I don't. And lots get recommended by friends who are already on the label. And every year it seems to get kind of better. Not bigger, but better. And it's about, you know, meeting interesting people with something to say.
Do you find you're getting influenced by the acts that are on the label?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, because, you know, one thing inspires the other. You know, a record, you know, I'll hear, I like for some reason, you know, and I don't exactly know what it is, but then I'll put it out, and all of a sudden it kind of has a reflection on what you do next, or what's presented to you next, and whether, you know, it might be something that's a little bit further on than the last album that you loved and you put out. And I think it's... Yeah, it's a good thing.
Listening to a lot of your records, I think you sort of went strength to strength. Like, you didn't just have the first album and then sort of that was your best work. So what would you say is like good advice for just getting better?
That's a good question.
Yeah, just keep going, really. Our first record, you know, we didn't know any better. And then after that, was kind of like everything else that came from that, you know, we had to take into consideration. So it was kind of, the second and third album were kind of like really kind of quite weird, but then we just kind of just kept going really, and then all our, you know, fragments of the ideas that we ever had just started to come into place. So my advice would be to just keep going, and I think you do get better as you get a bit more finely tuned.